It's printed on the Schedule A, not from Israel, that they can't buy raw vegetables and herbs and spices from Eretz Yisrael. It's a bigger problem when people run into Costco. Costco happens to be a shutif in a co-op that imports fruits and vegetables from Eretz Yisrael. So it's not that, they might buy it. They dafka have it because they're part of that co-op.
Coffee, regular coffee, decaffeinated coffee, flavored coffee, and these little coffee cups, and who knows what else comes today in packages. What's the story with them for a whole year and for Pesach?
B'derech klal, ground coffee beans themselves, if they're not flavored, do not present any problem. There's just they just take it in off the field, they pack it in, they clean it up, they put it in the roaster, and zehu. Later, if they're flavored, they will put them in a panner, it's called, and they will spray a liquid flavor onto it, and from that point on, it requires a recognized hashgacha. That's as far as if you can buy a bag of coffee beans, it's not going to be a problem, or even the ground coffee is not going to be a problem. Once you move further downstream into other processes, you have to be concerned. For instance, if you're going to have the Keurig cups and the pods, which what you're speaking about, the Keurig cups themselves are not the problem, because if it has the plain coffee in it, that's all it's going to have in it. The biggest problem is that people used to think that since the coffee is not a problem, they can go, if they work in an office where other people use the same machinery, or sometimes a person comes to a hotel and a Stickler Feinschmecker hotel will have a Keurig machine in the room, or by the coffee, by the breakfast, and they say, was kann schon sein? Keurig has reached out and created partnerships with Campbell Soups, and which is mamish nevela. I mean, you're talking about serious stuff. It's not just a question of. They also have milk, cocoa cups that they have, which is then you can say, was kann schon sein? It's milk, but it could very, very well be nevela in that machine, and I really would not recommend using public access Keurig machines. It's even in your own office if there are people who will use things that you cannot be comfortable with. The packages themselves, there's no reason to be concerned about if they're just plain coffee. If they are flavored, again, flavored coffees require a hechsher, not only concerning the kashrus, but flavored coffees lend themselves to being milchik in the formulation of the flavor itself, because the way you want that type of a something called mouthfeel. When flavorists develop flavors, it is a whole chaviyah that they're trying to accomplish, something called mouthfeel, and they want that creaminess, they want that it should taste milchik. So you have to be very, very careful that the stuff that you're going to buy should be done with the proper hashgacha. Decaf, there are two processes for making beans. Beans grow with caffeine in them. That's just the way the Rebbeinu Shalom created it. If you want to wash it out, there are two ways to make it. One uses water, it's called the Swiss method. There's another that uses something called ethyl acetate. Ethyl acetate is a chemical which is a combination of ethanol and acetic acid, and they dissolve out the caffeine from the beans. Ethyl acetate is at least kitnius, and in Europe, it's common for the acetic acid in Europe and the ethanol too to be chametzik. So it's very, very, very important that a decaf coffee have a very reliable hechsher if you can use it on Pesach. During the year, it's not going to be a problem, but on Pesach, it would be a very major concern.
What about tea? Herbal teas, flavored teas, decaf teas? Safra, what do you say?
Okay, teas, a decaf tea would have the same problem as a coffee. It obviously needs a hashgacha for Pesach. Tea leaves themselves do not present the problem. There are different types of teas. There's something called herbal teas, and within herbal teas there are two types. Many people in the Heimische Olam are eingewöhnt that they'll use medicinal teas like chamomile, peppermint, these type of teas. All that is simple botanicals. It's just dried leaves that you put in water. The word tea does not mean the liquid of a tea leaf. A tea means something that you brewed with a botanical, with a leaf. And there are many, many different types of leaves that are used for different types of medicinal purposes. And And if what you have in the little sack is just a leaf, for instance, like chamomile tea or peppermint tea, then there's no problem at all. However, when you talk about, they call them herbal teas, but stuff like celestial seasoning and others, bigelow, these types of things, those herbal teas almost all, they also have some peppermint and chamomile, almost all of them have some sort of flavors and flavor additives. And like any other flavor, a flavor can, honest to goodness, without any problem, be milchiks or to be not kosher. And it's certainly no ogehit in the yid could possibly be using not a tea, not a coffee that is flavored without making sure that it has a reliable hechsher.
The tea companies that don't have a hechsher on the flavor teas, the regular teas you could use as it doesn't get mixed up or anything?
The regular teas, no, because the companies happen to mitam themselves be very careful with when they even if they use the same machinery for blending it, because they mix it up. It comes in packed tight from the Far East, and they blend it up simply to mix it up, and then they put it into the sachets. They wash down the equipment with alcohol, with the isopropyl alcohol, just so we can make sure there's no oils left, there's nothing there, in order to contaminate from one taste to the next.
Cocoa mixes for a whole year for Pesach. Need a hechsher. It's a big difference. Plain cocoa or it's mixed with other things.
So here's the plain cocoa. That means baking cocoa. You cannot make chocolate milk out of that unless you add a bunch of other stuff, because it has to mix. It's called an emulsifier. It needs an emulsifier. It needs something because the cocoa is going to float on top of the milk or on top of the water where you put it. So the emulsifier, which is usually lecithin, is what they need in order to make sure that it coats the grains, the dust of the cocoa, to let it sit b'shalom with the milk. So obviously a lecithin is a fraction of soy oil, and like any other refined oil, it requires hashgacha, and any derivative of refined oil, like lecithin, will require a hashgacha. If there's another emulsifier, any emulsifier requires sharp, clear hashgacha to make sure that it's kosher. So in part of your answer, cocoa mixes that you take a spoon, mix it into milk, absolutely, it's not shy to have such a thing that doesn't have an important kashrus concern that had to have been dealt with. There's more of a concern, when you have Chol Yisrael, the cocoa mixes that you take it out and they contain milk powder. You just have to make sure that it's being done with a hashgacha that's very, very clear on where they're getting the milk powder from, because milk powder is something that is used a lot in the kosher junk food, like cocoa powder, cocoa mixes, and chocolate. They use a velt of that. It's not clear where they're getting the milk powders from, and I know that certain times in the past, things that they thought was Chol Yisrael was being done with certain, not dreidlich, with a cheshbon, and cheshbenis, stay in a bank. Cheshbenis don't go into kashrus. Someone who's smarter than everybody else and has a cheshbon, why all this is really Chol Yisrael, you have to be very careful who it is that's giving the hechsher, and they have to be, the Rabbanim Machshirim have to be held accountable of what it is that they're using in their products. And this is one of them, because there's a lot of product out there that contains milk powder, and there's only a limited amount of milk powder in the market.
The $1 million question, this chocolate, I'm talking about the junk chocolate, the one that we enjoy eating, the powder ones that look really kosher, which are really Chol Yisrael, that you can say across the board, it's 100% good.
If I would like chocolate, maybe I would spend a lot more time looking into it. It's I never understood that people machen sich mishuga, but the process of chocolate. Here is an interesting fact about chocolate. You can take 2,000 gallons of liquid chocolate, you put in 2 drops of water, and it's destroyed. You can throw the whole thing in the garbage. It blooms, it hardens the fat, it has white crust and white powder on the outside of it. So there is no way that a company is going to allow water into their plant. At one time, I kashered a chocolate plant with an hagala. It took 2 weeks. The company was closed for 2 weeks, and after we cleaned out, here's another, before you get there, the reason that it's so difficult. Stainless steel is very, very expensive. Every company you go into, you see all the machinery is made out of stainless steel. Why? Because or else it's going to get rusty. You use water, they're kashrut cleaning it, they're kashrut using water. If you don't use stainless steel, it gets rusty, and the rust gets into your product. So that's why you have stainless steel. There's one yotzim in the klal. The yotzim in the klal is chocolate companies. Why? Chocolate companies, what if you had a piece of mild steel that can very easily get rusty, what do you do to make sure it doesn't get rusty? You coat it with oil. Because the oil doesn't let the air get to the metal and doesn't oxidize and doesn't make it rust. So somebody realized that chocolate is kamat kule oil. So since we're using oil in our machinery, and spend money on stainless steel, we're going to use chocolate. It's going to keep it oiled. Everything will be cheap. We buy cheap stuff, and then there's Shalom Al Yisrael. And then you want to come in and say, you know what? First, you have to get rid of all the oil on the cup because or else it's chayzetz. You can't make hagolah if there's oil in. So first, we're going to wash with soap and water all your machinery. And then we're going to take mayim reischim and we're going to boil out all your machines. And they tell you, there's the door, have a nice day. You know, for a couple of boxes, there's some Hamish guy says, listen, I can explode your market. I'll sell 4 boxes for you, you know? They don't want to listen to it. This particular company, what they did was they had to clean it, and they had 2 boilers. They had a boiler, they had 2 tanks. One tank was full of boiling water that they flushed through the tank, immediately followed by 10,000 gallons of coconut oil to flush out every last bit of water out of the lines. Trust me, that's not what's happening in chocolate companies that manufacture kosher. There is Grada, one new company that started last year under the Velover. It's called Geneve, I think. And I discussed with him Quinoa, the very echte hagolah he made on those kalim. It was a new place, and they took it and they dried it. He said you only have to do once. They're going to keep these things kosher, and that lidati is. It used to, another company used to do it. They no longer do it, but this is the only one I know that's done with an echt hagolah like that. There are 2 other eitzes for koshering. One is when you make a hagolah b'shar mashkim, which means that we know that when you make hagolah means you take mayim reischim and kabbalah chachpal. Now, if you can't use water, what do you use? The Mishnah Berurah in Hilchos Pesach talks about making hagolah with other types of liquids, and l'maisa b'diavad. If you have dinner, so you have to know whether yen seichus l'chatchila is real b'diavad. But let's say it's b'diavad. So they say you could. There's another shaila. If you take a bar of chocolate, right, and you pick it up and you say, "Can I make hagolah with this bar of chocolate?" That's silly. It's solid. How can you make hagolah with a bar of chocolate? You have to heat it. But it's a mechtes. That's called the davar nezel. If something is solid at room temperature, there's a whole peck of achrayim that's a mechates. That's called the davar nezel b'chlal. And even if you were to say that you can kasher with shar mashkim, with shemen, with oil, mechates that has anything to do with chocolate. So there are many paiskim who hold that chocolate b'chlal you can't kasher with, and there are many chocolate companies, their kashering is done with hot chocolate. Now, we're not going to talk about the fact that you can't actually heat chocolate above about 140, 150 degrees because it burns. So we're not even talking about hagolah. You're not even making hagolah b'shar mashkim, right? Hagolah you can do with oil. For instance, there are certain oil manufacturing plants which now come out. It's not benimtza b'chlal. I think there are 2 factories left in the United States that use the same machinery, the same lines for kosher and not kosher in oil refining. But they used to have a lot more, and there they would do a hagolah, and you take oil, then you can boil it up. You can have 300 degrees and boil it up. But that's not what they're doing here. That's one thing. They make hagolah with chocolate, which is a shayla you talk to your Rav about. And there's another thing, which is the halacha is that you're allowed to do what's called libun kal b'mokum hagolah. There are 3 different ways of kashering things. One is called hagolah. That means that if something is makabel blias through a liquid medium, so you make a hagolah with a boiling liquid. Then there's something that something that only needs the libun kal. It's not going to go into what all those halachas are, which means the halacha of what's called libun kal, ungenommen in the Welt, like most achrayim, is that if it's nitzos, that if it sparks, that means and what does it mean it sparks? So that it's kash nisrif is another criteria, which means that if you have straw, but we don't have straw to walk around with, if you take a piece of tissue paper and you put it on the metal, and it's hot enough that it'll burst into flame, that's called libun kal. That's 451 degrees. That's the ignition point of paper. Now, libun chamur is over 800 degrees. It has to glow. It has to be so hot that it's not. Now, the reason is because when you have the difference between hagola and libun, hagola is pilot blia. Anything that got absorbed, when it goes into it, and so anything that was there, it opens the pores, it brings it back out, you pour it out, you get cold water, shalom Yisrael. Libun doesn't pull anything out. It's so hot that it burns it. It's nisraf b'mekaymei. Now, you can't play with that. If you're looking to do something that has blias of something that's not kosher, and all kosher chocolates are made in factories that also make non-chalav Yisrael, and if a person holds that blias of non-chalav Yisrael, of chalav akum, in Europe especially, where they don't have it has the din of Easter, so it means if it has blias of Easter, that means if you're going to make a libun to the point it's going to be nisr b'mekaymai, so you have to be machmer, or at least to make a good libun kal. Now, there is a shittas of the Shulchan Aruch Harav that says that the shear of libun kal is not kash nisrif. The Rav says that if you heat something with a fire on this side of the metal, and it's there so hot that the second side of the metal becomes yad seildes, das is genug. Why? Because it means that there was heat that was absorbed through the entire metal. Rabbi Moshe says very interesting words. Rabbi Moshe says there are many different shittas in what's considered yad seildes. Some hold 110, some hold 165, 170. So Rabbi Moshe says that if you're looking to use yad seildes for a kula, you have to use the most chamadik shita of yad seildes. Because you can't be makel both ways and say, I'm going to use a yad seildes, I'm going to use a libun kal, and in the libun kal, I'm going to go, it's only 110 degrees. Because you're using a kula on top of a kula. So therefore, those companies that want to use the libun kal, b'mokum hagola, which is absolutely correct in halacha. In halacha, if you have a keli that you can't, it's too big. If you have a keli that's too big, caterers do this all the time. All these people that go away for Pesach over there, they have these huge kelim they have to kasher, and there's nothing big enough to make a hagola on the keli, so they make a libun kal. But the libun kal that they make has to be l'chumra. You can't be makel by doing a kula. So that means that when they heat these kelim for making chocolate with the libun kal, they have to come in and heat it to the other side, should be at least 165 degrees. At least, that's even if you're going to the most kaldik shita of the Rav Shulchan Aruch, and the most, but at least it has to be that. And it's not clear to me that they do this. The Zurich Bezdin has told me that finally, after many years of fighting, they have been allowed to get it up to temperatures approaching that. That's Shmerlin. Well, I could tell you that when I spoke to the Rav of the Zurich Bezdin, I asked him why he has his kosher candies in molds that are specially reserved for non-kosher chocolate. He said, they were using the same molds. So it's not real clear that that's true.
Okay, that's regular chocolates. Concerning the milchiks, which one is careful with the...
Genève has milk chocolate.
We have a baking chocolate and chocolate chips. Okay, that's not made of those.
No. The chocolate chips you can get at Hezbollah, it's a totally different process. And I can tell you that the mishpacha, geffen, even hadar and glicks are made, they repack. None of them make their own, none of these people make any of their own stuff. But they buy it. There's a company, actually two companies now, because it's a very profitable line. There are two companies that manufacture parva chocolate chips on totally dedicated parva lines that never see anything else. They don't have to be cleaned. They were built new, and they're there. And what these places do, mishpacha, geffen, hadar, and glicks, is they buy 50-pound things and they go and they repack it into their cellophanes, and it's not a problem for the chocolate chip. U.S. chocolate buys it also from them. The used chocolates, they don't manufacture either. They buy it. It's two places, Carbon. Yeah.
Okay, breakfast cold cereals. Saturday on the shine of Pascal, Saturday on the shine of officially so. Slightly on the side of flavors. Which ones are hechsher? I know in the past you said that the Kellogg's was a big problem, and then I know that you took it over, so maybe it got a little better.
It got as in,
So
yeah, I understand. Yeah, no, it's interesting because it got better before the OU took it over. There was a guy. There used to be somebody at Kellogg's for many years that it was a himmel geshrei, and I once met the I don't know if his name was Mr. Kellogg's, but I met one of them. I said, how does it pass for a company, you guys are like the biggest in the world, and you have such a hashgacha that's such a shvala and nothing, everybody knows it's nothing? He said, because he lets us do whatever we want. So that's the hashgacha they had before. About 8 years ago, it was taken over, the hashgacha was taken over by somebody, a very ehrlich young man, a Ben Teira, who spent many years working on it, and it turned the whole thing over. The ingredients and the processes and the separations. And finally, when it got better, they decided to go to the OU. They figured as long as they're doing it anyways, they might as well get a more recognized hechsher. Yeah. They have other plants that are not under the OU, weren't under the OK. There's one in Europe that's under the Manchester Basin. There are other plants in South America, but those are not. They never make it here. The only one that makes it here is they have a cornflake crumb manufacturing plant in Mexico that supplies products here. So
which ones are?
So even that you have to be careful because there is one thing that has a K, and that is not kosher. It has gelatin.
I just want to add that Kellogg's has other items that are definitely not kosher. They even sent the email.
Yeah.
They have these bars, these fruit bars, and
yeah. That's the problem. That's the problem with having a very famous name, because people see the bars and they think, oh, I know that the cereals, and if it doesn't have an OU, probably it's packaging. It's absolutely not true. Anything except for this breakfast cereal in the boxes, you have to be very careful with. They have, many of them have hashgachas that are not acceptable because they use gelatin. Many of these bars use gelatin to hold it together, and it's not kosher b'chlal. Concerning the Bishul Yisrael and the Paspalter aspect, Bishul, in order for something to rise to the level that it would be an Isser of Bishul Akum, it has to first of all be Oyel Shulchan Malachim, and we don't have malachim anymore, bisman hazeh. We have to imagine, what a shulchan malachim would be. There was grad, I don't know if I told this story here, but if there's still such a musig, because the Jimmy Carter, when he was president, he said, he's a farmer. He's a gemeine proste guy. So he called the chef in the White House. He says, tonight, for supper, I want hamburgers and French fries. So the chef told him, if you want hamburgers and French fries, you go to McDonald's. This is the White House. We don't make that kind of food here. So there's a hasaga. There's a hasaga that a Bakavitika person doesn't eat this. A Bakavitika person might eat cereal for breakfast, but that doesn't make it into Bakavitika Essenwerk. So it's a big shiloh whether or not any of these things that are just, that's one side, a very strong side that there's no Isur Bishalak, does not apply. The other is the fact that Reb Moshe has a tshuva where he writes that, and we see it, he molds it ice from Ishon, where the reason that there's no Isur of Bishul Akum and Ishon, because it's not derech Bishul B'kach. It's not the normal way, and Reb Moshe extends that to say that if you have other means of cooking, which are not derech Bishul B'kach, that means you're not going to find it in your own home. This isn't the way people cook, so there's no Isur of Bishul Akum in that. The type of machinery that they use in these factories, even the processes, it's not just a big bowl, a big pot. As you say, you wouldn't have at home. It's just processes that b'chlal have no shaykhis to the way you cook at home. That's another very strong tzad, that there is no problem with bishul. Now, concerning things that are mezainis, in order for mezainis to have a din of pas, it has to rise to the criteria of tayar lechem and things like that. For instance, take the most famous mezainis, which would be Cheerios. Rav Belsky held that the Cheerios, and this applies for many other mezainis type of cereals also, really they are cooked. And even though they go through an oven later, the oven is just to dry them off. It's not a cooking process, not a baking process. It's a process by which you take a cooked item, which is mutter because it's not there's no isur b'shlakum, and it's dried out. So that would be thing. Now, if a person wants to be machmer, tavol of bracha, but if you're going to go through the expense of making sure that you're getting something that's pas Yisrael or bishul Yisrael, make sure that the hashgacha, they're sending down somebody that knows how to turn on the right machine to make sure that it's not just like some of them just show the packaging machine, and by the time it gets there, it's already fully done. So you have to know that the hashgacha, it's not just and some tzigiklept sticker that's going to be a hashgacha. You know that the person that's involved with it actually knows how to create bishul Yisrael when he does so.
What about the flavors that go into the free flavored cereals?
Most of those are artificial, and when it comes to flavors, the emes is that all flavor companies are basically under good hashgacha by this time. Come out, all flavor companies. The OU has most of them. The Chavke has a couple. And Kadosh Baruch Hu had zugeshickt that the people that are running the flavor divisions are tichtige people. And the flavors themselves are not going to be the problem. It's just the application. You have to make sure that when it's that they're getting the right stuff, and that's totally in every field person. And it depends on the quality of the mashgiach.
Hot cereals, does it need a hechsher when it's not hot yet? And is any hechsher enough? And sometimes this flavored hot cereals, you make a lot of packages to flavor hot cereals.
Yeah, so first of all, you have to be very, very careful because a lot of the hot cereals are also dairy. And they're actually, they'll carry the dairy designation, but when a person buys oatmeal, and especially when you have, Quaker Oats has variety packs, and if you look and you say, all you notice is the cinnamon apple or the maple, and you say, oh, I know that's parv, and you don't realize that there are also 2 or 3 packages in there with peaches and cream or strawberry and cream and things like that, and those are echt milchig, so you have to be very careful with it. But getting to the ikar shaila that you asked, plain oatmeal and plain farina do not present any problem on the grains themselves. In other words, what you're getting, if you buy a box of oatmeal, you buy a box of farina, it does not present any kashrus shaila at all. Obviously, when you get further in, they start blending in flavors. You can't just buy one off the shelf without a hashgacha, and you have to make sure that you're getting one that the good news is that the major companies have that they do their business. They don't bring out new products until they've checked them with the OU. The OU or the Chavke or the OK, the OU and the Chavke will certainly make sure that the products that's going into them, the ingredients going into them, are at least coming in with good hashgachas. I mean, they're never going to go out. If you're talking about some, mom and pop store that they don't know they're supposed to send it in, they're supposed to, but these larger companies are come out, and sometimes you'll have a problem that they misbrand. But the products that they have a hashah to make are usually in the simple facts. I'm not talking about more sophisticated zachen that have emulsified those, but stuff like this where the only question would be the flavor would not be a concern.
I know that square is very market and living aspect of the ayah, but I think the other Hamish mayonnaise brands may make a mistake are not. Is there any difference between the Hamish mayonnaise and the regular agency mayonnaise?
The difference is such. Some egg companies, I don't even know if it's in the gay anymore, but this was certainly there used to be, when it was common to have egg mixtures manufactured for government contracts, when they had government breakfasts, things like that, the government stipulated that the eggs had to have a certain amount of milk in the egg mixture. So that means that when you blend it and then you put it to the pasteurizer has to be kosher. That everybody's masking to, and there's nobody that will use a pasteurizer after such thing without koshering it. Here's the problem. A pasteurizer uses b'derech klal. There are a couple of different ways, but the most simple application of a pasteurizer is called a plate pasteurizer, and you'll have on one side of a plate, you'll have a product, that means it's a thin film egg. On the other side of the plate, you're going to have boiling water that will heat the egg, and from there it goes to be cooled. It takes mamish a second, but that's enough to pasteurize it. The problem is that the halacha views metal as being semi-permeable. I mean, when you look, and this is, it makes it, when you deal with companies, they just simply can never understand that, what do you mean? There's waters over here, it's not touching the product. you say, yeah, and you try to explain to them the halacha that kli and a gaspa kli with reitiv has a din of one kli. That means that if you take two pots, if you have two things, you have a big pot, and you have two cans in the big pot. And we're going to come to this when we're talking about canned vegetables, where even though they're both sealed and they're both separate, if they're connected by liquid, the halacha says that they're blias and it's viewed like one environment and it's aser. That means that if you have water that you're using for pasteurizing, so even though it's not physically touching the eggs, it's on the other side, but this water now has din of milchiks. If the eggs are milchik, so the water's milchik. If the water's milchik, the pasteurized milchik. And then the water that goes back to the reservoir and to the boiler, the whole thing has to be dumped before you can go weiter. The OU has a very pragmatic application where they say that Lamaisa, there's not enough milk. They've investigated it fully. There's not enough milk that's going to end up leaving a bleach. So they will kasher the pasteurizer, but they will not dump the water. They don't empty the water in order to before they pasteurize it. So there are those agencies, those ashkachas who say that, you have a cheshbon, how do you know? Maybe the cheshbon is wrong, maybe it is, maybe it's not. It has din b'asar shahar b'chacham, whatever the cheshbon is, they don't want to use that. A person has to know that if they're responsible, this wasn't a psak, a recent psak. Rav Belsky's Auerbach is the one that worked out this cheshbon and this psak. So there certainly is a very, very solid mitzias and halacha to the basis for this psak halacha. And if a person is going to be saimach on that, then the other agencies, the other mayonnaises are certainly as good as anything else. If a person wants to say that I don't want to be saimach on this shita, then that's why they would use something else.
How about the ketchup?
And hope that the person who's going down to watch the manufacturing of the mayonnaise at some Billy Bob in Arkansas understands enough to make sure it's kosher when it's finished. As opposed to Hellman's, who was real mashgiach and a real hashgacha.
And opposed to Hellman's and the ShopRite brands and the other...
I don't know where they're made. I don't know where they're made. They have to be made in a place that has a good hashgacha.
Ketchup, tomato sauces, tomato paste, pizza sauce, salsa, and
yeah.
What could be the issues, and is there a big difference between the hechsher and the not hechsher? Because a lot of times...
You mean the size for the taste and the price?
A lot of times the shoes get from the DJ, whatever.
Yeah. So here's the story. Whenever you have a tomato plant, a plant that manufactures tomato products, you have to be concerned that they're going to make trefa stuff. The reason for it is that there are pizza sauces that have cheese in them when they manufacture it. They have not kosher, other kinds of not kosher things, and they manufacture it in the same plant, in the same machinery as the kosher stuff. Now, that goes for sauces, that goes for salad dressings that are heated, all these things. There is not a plant in the world that does not require koshering. So, I could tell you that in MPGS, there are many sauces with national hashgachas that we do not carry on the shelves, because I know that the plants are being koshered with an automated system that other agencies are comfortable with, and I think that it's not responsible to kosher from nevela without a mashgiach present. So there's, you have to know, you have to do your homework. Find out what's being manufactured in this plant. If the plant that puts out this kosher product, also if you look on their product listing, and on the product listing they also that they sell have stuff that's not kosher, you have to know how they kosher it. And the truth is that every person has a responsibility to call, whether it's the OU or the OK or the Chavk, and ask them very frankly, does this company require koshering? Is it totally parv? If it's totally parv, it doesn't require koshering, that's one thing. If it requires koshering, the next question is there a mashgiach present each time there is koshering? Not is the koshering done under hashgacha, because what that means is that the company does it themselves and they keep the records, and then when the mashgiach gets around to it a week or 2 or 3 later, he comes and he checks the records. That's under hashgacha, that's not with the mashgiach present. The correct lashon, they're not going to lie to you, hopefully. The correct question is, you go and you ask, is there a mashgiach, if it requires koshering, is there a mashgiach present when the koshering is done? And if there's not, it's very difficult to endorse something like that. That a place that self-koshers. I mean, Marshall, Heinz ketchup makes not kosher once a year, and there's a mashgiach there the entire time that they're doing treif. Now, they don't have a mashgiach tmidi when they're making kosher, because they only make kosher when they're making kosher. But when they have treif, they have a mashgiach tmidi there the entire time, and they kosher it afterwards with hashgacha tmidis on the koshering. So, it's each company can be different, but any of these products, after tomato paste, the tomato paste is the first step. That would not really require hashgacha. But anything after that, tomato juice, crushed tomatoes and juice, tomato puree, spaghetti sauce, salsas, all these things require eingeschlossene hashgachas.
So the Heinz company is good?
I'm sorry?
The Heinz company.
The Heinz ketchup is fine.
Isn't it true that they make it in two separate places?
Not anymore.
Mustard appeared, deli mustards. What's the story there?
Deli mustard is really very simple. If you have the Feinschmecker mustards, they have something called Dijon mustard or these other ones. You have to check the ingredients. Some of them have white wine in them, and I don't care whose hashgacha it has. It's not clear to me they're going to be doing it right. So, you can avoid the Dijon mustard that has wine in it. Other mustard is very, very simple. All they do is they take mustard powder, they blend it with vinegar, and to go buy treif of vinegar bisman hazeh, you have to be looking, you have to be mamash Russia to do it. There is non-kosher vinegar with kalim problems. That means if you buy, let's say, if you take a small Billy Bob company that some Heimish guys can make his mustard or his mayonnaise, and they buy their vinegar from a plant that is repacking it, and the hashgacha doesn't chap, that they bought it from a repacker that also has non-kosher wine vinegar, then you'll have a problem. And because you have to know what you're buying. So you have to make sure that the Heimish place that's buying it is aware of that also.
Okay, here's the hard question, oil. Which oil is good throughout the year, and also especially for Pesach? The most vegetable oil is a pretty simple thing. Canola oil, cottonseed oil, but when you come to the walnut, hazelnut, grapeseed, and olive oil especially, for a whole year and for Pesach.
So let's talk about the easy ones first. Baruch Hashem, and I hold that this is purely a dank the Bald brothers. This year, I spoke with quite a number of hashgachas about their olive oil, only the extra virgin olive oil, and they each told me that this year they had a mashgiach there from the crush all the way through the bottling and labeling. They had a mashgiach present all the time. That goes from mishpacha, for Geffen, the one that Skler has, I forget the name. The Hesachtis told me that any extra virgin olive oil that has the CRC on it means that there was mashgiach there. B'tchila v'yad seifai. I spoke to Shmuel Teitelbaum for the Minchas Chinuch. He told me the same thing. So this year, Baruch Hashem, it's quite possible to get kosher extra virgin olive oil without the problems that we ran into in the past. I would, even if they said it, I wouldn't use it. It doesn't get light by itself. It's refined. Extra virgin olive oil, they squeeze it, they collect it, they bottle it. Zahu. Once they do other things, they put it in refineries, they have to collect it, they have to ship it, they have to refine it, they have to bring it back, they have to blend it in. It's a whole process. And if there's one mashgiach, a extra virgin olive oil is a very simple process, and one mashgiach can keep an eye on it. If you're going to run into these other things with other processes are involved, it's not pashut, and that's where you have all the other problems with the non-kosher, the non-kosher Pesach products that other agencies have because they blend in other oils. And for a whole year, I can't be margal myself to say that everything else is fine. The extra virgin olive oil is easy to do, and they say they're doing it, we'll believe them. The other ones, I'm not saying it's not good, but they all claim that it is good. I'm very happy to be able to deliver to you extra virgin olive oil. The other oils, unless you use it for left and Shabbos, it's a sim bracha for children. But other than that, I'm not saying it's not, but I'm not going to stand up here and tell everybody to use it. Going on to the other oils, grapeseed. You know that the grapeseed oil that they manufacture is made from not kosher grapes, from the seeds, from not kosher wine. That's what grapeseed comes from. There is not enough kosher wine in the world to support the requirement of seeds that they need for making grapeseed oil. There's a tremendous verfleitzung of grapeseed oil out there because everybody thinks that it's a healthy zach, and the Rabbanim whose name appears in these things have told me clearly they collect the pits from not kosher, and their saimach, there's a chsam sefer that says it has din upon mechadosh's bo'olakan, and that's what the saimach on. I asked them if they wash it, how they wash it, if they're temdan. The mechaber says that if you take the chasanim lezagim, if you have to tempt them, you have to soak them and wash them and make sure that any residue of the stam yenim that was there before is washed away. It wasn't clear from their answer how scrupulously they wash it before they crush it, because it doesn't need to be washed first. Because when you crush it and you expel the oil, so any of the water and anything else is going to separate in the separator, and they'll take off the oil. So it's not clear to me. You better make sure that the hashgacha that you're using is doing their job correctly, not during the question of the processing or the collecting of the seeds, as much between once they collect the seeds before they start the crushing, that they wash it properly. That's as far as that goes. There are many kulas that hashgachas use in this that I do not believe are appropriate. That's for grapeseed oil. Benigeya, soy and canola are the least of the problems, cottonseed certainly, because they're manufactured locally and packed locally. You don't have the problem of the shipping. Coconut oil, did you want the whole 9 yards? The other oils also?
Walnut, hazelnuts, rapeseed.
Rapeseed is canola. Yeah. Hazelnut and walnut are the bedats. I know that the bedats has something under the product called Maya, and they manufacture it in a plant in California, which they send down a very good mishkiach to kasher the plant before they manufacture the walnut oil. I know of other hashgachas that are kosher Pesach that don't kasher because they said that it's just walnut oil, just squeeze the walnut. What can be the problem? There are many problems. First of all, even if it's not refined, the very crushing creates heat. The very crushing, it makes the expeller hot, and even it's called ironically, it's called a cold press, an expeller cold press, but it is really hot from the friction. And so you can sit and be tired, but it's not al yidei eish. If it's not al yidei eish, you need hagolah because only you can still such a shtickle teira. I would tell people to use the Maya product with the bedats for their walnut oil.
And the Gabi Pesach, the cottonseed oil, am I correct that it's made in a all cottonseed
Yes.
oil plant? And
Yes.
nothing else there, so
It's called
it's from the American and bottom.
Yes.
All there's no kidneys.
That-
That's the best of Pesach.
Yes, it absolutely. That certainly has the least of the problems, and according to those people, according to those minhagim, that cottonseed is not. It's not nechal. It's not a meichel odom. It's not. It's not meaning the midgun, and it's never used for anything that comes near food. Not the cotton, not the stalk, not the seeds. So that's the makar of the minig, that it's not a min kitnius.
Okay, like Gabi, a whole year peanut butter. There's two types of peanut butter. There's the Iker peanut butter that we have in the market is processed with other ingredients.
Yes.
Then there's raw unprocessed, which come with either hechsher or no hechsher. The third, to my understanding, peanut butter that's processed needs to go to hechsher.
Yes.
And peanut butter that's not processed, the third doesn't need any hechsher. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And
That's correct.
which peanut butter is good? That's
Skippy is certainly a good quality peanut butter that has an excellent texture. There's one ingredient, it's the emulsifier, that they have to, it's not a multitude of ingredients, and it's not something that is some in iron. The company, when you have a company like Skippy, they experiment until they find the correct emulsifier that suits their needs, and that's what they buy and that's what they use. And they certainly, the OU is not only NEMA that they checked it out, but I know that the emulsifier that they're using is fine, and you don't have to be concerned that they can run out of emulsifier in the middle of a run and go down to the corner store and buy emulsifier.
Is this also correct for all nut butters?
The nut butters, I can't talk to nut butters. The only nut butters I can tell you is the plain unprocessed ones, and you can tell them because usually if they're on the shelf a long time, they'll start separating. If you have a nut butter that is not separating, that means there's an emulsifier there. That's just the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. If you have nuts and you crush them up, the oils will separate out. If you see a jar that is dusty and it's not separated, that means that there's an emulsifier that's not being declared. But if you're buying from a reputable company that has, and all it is a natural butter that has oil on top of it, you have to remix. There should be no problems at all.
Of course, the Metzah can be a problem. You must have
I've never seen that from Eretz Yisrael. I mean, if it's there, then it's a problem. It's like anything else from Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah. The Gabi oranges, we're not going to go into the shaila of the scales that
Well, I just want to tell you that contrary to what people think that in order to save themselves the problems, they're going to squeeze their own oranges. B'derech klal, you end up with a lot more scale in your orange from what you squeeze yourself than what you buy in the store. That's just the Metzias. We spent days squeezing with, we washed it with water and with soap and with bleach and with steel wool and with plastic and with brushes. And finally, the only way you can get it perfectly clean is if you take a potato peeler, and if you see the black marks, you just peel it off. If it's on the orange, it will be in your orange juice. Period. There's no shiloh. What?
We all squeeze lemons for Pesach. Same thing. Some have some.
Right. That's not as much.
And when cutting, also talking about this, when cutting grapefruits,
it doesn't happen. It does. Yeah, you have to. You can't be machbid on a tzibur with things that aren't in the game.
So regular oranges, frozen pulps, the one that they get for wick, they're frozen. Is there any issue?
I've never seen not in the kashrus and not in the scale issues. Nothing.
And the regular oranges. The regular oranges that come.
Regular orange juice.
Some of these are outside of place in Wisconsin. Regular oranges without a hechsher. It has enzymes in it.
It doesn't. You're not going to get the enzyme. The enzymes they use on the peels, not on even in the juices, they'll do it to break down the cell walls. They use it in such things. It's not a davar ma'imid because you certainly have more than zevazagar. They use it in parts per thousands. It's not going to. The enzyme is not going to be a problem. And the shiloh, like any other fruit juice, it's pasteurized. Unless it's refrigerated. A refrigerated juice. Here's the Metzias. The Metzias is if you have a fruit juice that you leave on your shelf, it's going to ferment. Period. That's the way it works. So, L'mashal, there's one famous grape juice company that says non-mavushal on their grape juice. Now, if you take grape juice, which is a fruit juice, and you don't pasteurize it, this same company says that their pasteurizing is mavushal. So that means if it says not mavushal, that means it's not pasteurized. If it's not pasteurized, it'll go sour very quickly. And this is the Metzias. It's not only Metzias. If you don't believe me, go home, take some juice, leave it, put it in a cup, leave it on your counter, and come back in 4 days, and see if it starts smelling like alcohol. That's just the Metzias. If you put fruit juice in a bottle and you don't pasteurize the juice, it will turn sour. Period. The difference is if you keep it refrigerated. So, fruit juices that you buy, you have to know what else they're manufacturing in the plant if it's not refrigerated. Even if it is refrigerated, if it has a long shelf life. So, b'di'evet, if you're stuck in Wisconsin, and b'di'evet, there are enough heterim that you can string together that you stam kelim and b'niyayman, and the first run is nasa gil chavere, and then it's bottle b'roiv. It's not just shavush of minion they put in the tanks. So there's certainly lahalacha you're allowed to drink it. Question is whether you go to 7-Eleven on 60th Street and say, I'm out of the Medina now. That wouldn't count.
So, what about apple juices, other juices that they have? That's already more.
It's not more processed, but you have the same problem. The apple juice is not going to be a problem from inside the ingredients. The apple juice is going to be that it's a very difficult thing. If a person has the opportunity to use something with a good hechsher, to say, it's an ben yomei, kol yom nasgil chavere, what can be the problem? It's very difficult to say you should use such thing. There there are certainly reasons to be makbid on a good hechsher for any type of juices, any type of fruit juices.
What about the frozen apple juice?
Frozen apple juice is only a problem on Pesach because most apple juice, including ones with Yiddish ices, have the apple juice concentrate coming from China, and we all know that China, the only thing that's true is that whatever they say is a lie. And they put corn syrup in the apple juice concentrate. They put corn syrup in instead of the thing, and it's for Pesach. It's very difficult to use anything except fresh squeezed apple juice.
You just reminded me of a story. Last year, I was right before Shir Challah, and somebody called me from a hospital. They had apple juice, those little cups of apple juice that they had in the refrigerator, and whatever, there was nothing else to drink. It was not in Brooklyn. And they asked me, so I said, I don't know, I'm going to call it Ramachshe. He said, Ramachshe, so I didn't know. I said, there might be other things in there. So he pulled up the Machshe on site, the Mashgiach, and he told me there's for sure, kidneys for sure, maybe even chametz in the apple juice.
Yeah, no, fruit juices, even, you don't need the greatest hechsher in the world, but you certainly need a hechsher. Stam hechsher. It's very, very not mistaver because it's too expensive. The only time, for a while, they were doing that. They were bringing from South America that deionized white grape juice, which is it's just sweet. It doesn't have a taste. And it was very cheap from South America, but it's not Matzah.
How about canned or dried pickles, olives, peppers? In the United States, today they're bringing from many European and Arabic countries.
The real problem is that Menschen haben sich eingerät, that was denn kann sein, it's brine, it's salt and water, you have to assume things that are brine, especially olives and pickles, from Greece, Italy, and now they're getting it all from Morocco, Tunisia, all kinds of shirts here. These places where they have cheap wine vinegar. The wine vinegar is cheaper to use in Italy and Greece. This I know from Matthias. It's cheaper to use wine vinegar to start the fermentation than take it out and put it in salt water brine than it is to brine it in salt water, because the vinegar is already fermented, so it ferments they have vegetables and the pickles and the olives, onions, all these things get much more quickly fermented if you start it off with wine vinegar. So you have to make sure two things. One, that you have a good hechsher, and two, that your hechsher is aware that you can't just take stuff. There are many agencies, commercial agencies, that believe that the olives, the olives, pickles, they'll take it as long as it says salt and water on the ingredients. It's a very big mistake. You need ashkachet smuda, mamish, from the time of the processing, the beginning of the processing.
How about canned things in the United States? Is that those products in the United States are easier?
The United States.
Because a lot of them have flavors in it also. Besides
have
flavors in them, natural flavors.
The natural flavors of many of these things is just a juice. They call it a natural flavor, so you think you're getting more than you are. Actually, what you're just getting is the juice of the product itself, of the fruit and vegetable. In America, a civilized country is not going to, much like China, when you go into a canning plant, they could be putting into the same canning in the same retort at the same time, kosher, non-kosher, chaza, fish, they all... Yeah, no, it's anybody... No, it's anybody that eats anything from China. I don't care who's the hashkacha. Anybody that eats something from China and finds out there was treif is damei al reishei. There's no havamina in the world. There is no person in the world that is as smart as a Chinaman is crooked. These Chinamen, they're born in circles. They're born crooked. They learn crooked. They live crooked. They lie. To them, it's a chshivas to lie. If by lying they can protect their boss, it's a chshivas to lie. You can take a guy and from Eretz Yisrael that'll go to China, go to Pakistan. They have these new candies. It's made in the IRK. You look at it, IRK. IRK is the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. And they go there, and the guy is willing to take his life in his hands. I spoke to the Mashgiach. He says he was locked in his room for a week because they told him, if you go out of the building, they're going to kill you. And they go over there, and they think that they're going to tell you the truth. They're going to tzigay ben ahan to make sure that it's done right. If you go to China and you go to these places, If you eat it, it's cheap. No seicher, no from seicher is going to China because he wants to make sure you're eating kosher. He wants to make sure he gets the thing for dirt cheap. He can charge 15 times as much. He'll take away all your money. And if you end up being treif, no, you'll do tshuva. He sure won't.
Canned vegetables, if the national hechsher, corn, peas, carrots, string beans, what are the kashrus?
Well, the good news about all those things that they are actually nechel k'may chai, so there's no shalom bishlachim. The kalim of these type of companies will deal with a season as it comes in. The carrots, the corn, the peas, string beans, they grow in different seasons, and as they come into the plant, they process it and can it right away. The chashash that you're going to run into is stuff when you have beans, canned beans, because they have canned beans also have other minim of cans that they do. That's the exception, not the rule. And it's not, when they run these things at the end of the season, they have to work, they run 24/7 to get it out. There's no real concern. There are companies that have multiple lines, and any time a company will do that, the hashgacha will be on top of it to make sure that they have separation. And again, every person has the right to call the agency that appears, the symbol appears, and you ask them, is this a totally kosher, totally powerful plant? If they won't answer the question, that's the answer. And if they do answer, if it's totally powerful, it's not a problem. If it's not a meshugan chumrah. If a yid wants to look, right? I mean, the sotan is lepesach chatzis rayvetz. Yeah, the Yetzer Hara nudges us all day and all. Another chumrah, shem vidiv sumkai. You're not so from anyways. What are you trying to kid, right? So you take it's kedai to take a little chumrah and start with that. A person has the right to ois for his chumrah and say, I'm only going to eat products from totally kosher companies. Ich will nicht ankommen to separate lines. Ich will nicht ankommen to a dover peikim in the water. Ich will nicht ankommen to kashering. I want to make sure you call the agency. Is this, I don't want to know any proprietary information. Is this plant totally kosher, totally parv? If they say no, you say, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And you know that for your level of chumrah, let me tell you, mekenachsach einsparen in problems, if you make sure that everything you eat is only from a plant that's totally kosher, totally parv, you can save yourself a lot of aggravation.
I just want to go ahead and say that I'm not trying to advocate to use non-hechsher products. I'm doing it because a lot of wasters rely on it, and people are stuck somewhere, so it's good to know also. Canned fruits with or without a share, what are the kashrus?
The chashashas of canned fruits is that, l'mashal, some of them now, because America is on this mishigas, that aside for they eat Starbucks with like this pastry you can kill somebody with. Yeah, they also, but then they're in a diet. So everything. So when they eat canned fruit, it has to be. They can't have sugar in it. So it has to have natural sweetener. The natural sweetener is where you're going to run into problems with possibilities of grape juice. Again, it's not matzah, but it's something that you have to be concerned about. Usually it'll be declared. Anything made in America certainly will be declared. The labeling is much more eingeschlossen. The other problems are only if the fruit is one that has a problem of teloim. For instance, if you have pineapple, the bad news is that the hechsherim don't think it's a problem. The good news is that if it's a problem, it's very visible, because the problem you have in pineapple is not that they're going to be running all over the place like you have in lettuce. The only place you're going to have a bug in pineapple, if you have one at all, and it's not motzi, there are these brown cups. They where, if you look at the outside of a pineapple, they have little squares. They're covered with little squares. In the middle of each of these squares, there's a cup, a guma, it flowers from there. In that guma, in that cup, is where you'll find the bug, if you find the bugs. So that means that if you buy a can of pineapple and you look at it and there are no brown indentations, no cups in them, so it's clean. That means that when the machine cut it out, it was cut enough. If you see it, take a tweezer, just pull off that brown part. Don't patchka around trying to see inside, outside. Pull it away and you have no problems at all. And people ask me about pineapple juice. Again, the good thing about pineapple juice is that it's durchsichtig. It's clear. You look at it. If you don't see any brown things floating around, then they're not there. It's not like aphids and thrips. Aphids and thrips are light green. They're almost white. So if they're in a white background, you're not going to see them. But the pineapple juice is a very pale yellow if it has a color at all. And if there's a brown bug floating in it, you'll be able to see it right away.
So there's pineapple juice you can drink unless you see
If you see it. I mean, look through it. You have to be careful.
Okay, here goes a tough one. Candies and gum. It's very interesting. The English should realize it by now that there's so many hechsherim don't give hashgacha on a lot of candies, and there's certain hechsherim that give their sticker or their name on so many candies that come from everywhere, and that's a big red flag. Am I correct?
It is a sticker. To the best of my knowledge, a sticker does not mean anything. It's the original container and the original products, and there is no extra pikud or anything that's done with any of the stickers other than, they put a sticker on. Now, so if you hold that Twizzlers is kosher, so go eat Twizzlers. If you hold Twizzlers not kosher, the sticker's not going to do you any good. It happens to be the Twizzlers is kosher.
All flavors and all.
Yeah, the Twizzlers themselves are. They make other things at Y&S, like Jolly Ranchers, so it has tartaric acid in it. But the other things, the Twizzlers, it's not negay the lines, and it's Twizzlers themselves are fine.
Candies are really hechsher. There's so many coming from different places for this hechsher we rely on. Because lately, what you see is that there used to be a lot of candies coming from different places in the world with certain hechsher, and somehow those hechsher are not visible anymore. There's no hechsher on them.
I don't know, there's what you're saying is very important, because when things change hechsher, and again, it wasn't a candy, it was a certain line of frozen vegetables that was made far away, and it had somebody's hechsher, and then the next time they sent a shipment, it's somebody else's hechsher. So I called the original Bar Rav Machshu, who's a friend of mine, and he gives a very eingeordnet and a very careful hashgacha. And I said, what happened? He said, well, this is a company that works 24 hours a day, and he went there and he told the balabas that he needs 3 shifts of 2 mashgichim to keep an eye on what's going on. Then the balabas found somebody else who says, 6 mashgichim. I have 2 mashgichim. This guy will do it. So the balabas said, well, that's 2/3 of a saving right there. So he sent him home, and then the other guy, his Yiddish Oisius suggested Yiddish, and everybody goes Shalom Yisrael, and then he says, it has also a hechsher, and the reason is because the balabas found the cheaper hechsher. And the second Rav Machsher is a wise guy, and he always finds these. What's wrong? Who says say in halacha you need 6? I think you can need 2. So, stuff like that is very difficult to keep track of. So, if you have things that had a hashgacha, now it has a different hashgacha, you have to be very careful why it has a different hashgacha. If it's coming from different places in the world, or all it has is for instance, there's Oreos that are coming from the Philippines or in the Far East with a sticker on it. It's made in a trefa place. The Rav Machsha is not one whom I would recommend under any circumstance. And they're selling it in all the Yiddish meisters because Oreos, everybody knows in America has an OU. And here's an Oreo with not only the OU, but Yiddish Oisius doesn't have the OU, so who cares? The reason it doesn't have the OU is because it's a trefa plant, and it's a trefa product. And it's very difficult to imagine that the product is kosher. Yeah. No, it's a very big problem. It's a very big problem. The candies have to be made in a kosher plant. I was handling with the Rav Machsher. I got three complaints in 1 week from Rebbeim that were giving out certain candies from a certain company, and they found other candies in it, and the other candies were not kosher. So I spoke to the Rav Machsher. He says, "Yeah, well, we have a kosher line." And he says, I said, yeah, but if you have a kosher line, so what's the treif doing in it? He says, well, when they come from, at one place, they cross over. So I said, the treif is on top or on bottom? He says, the treif is on top. I said, oh, that's not a good idea. I said, there's treif. He says, do you think I can guarantee that every candy in there is kosher? I said, yeah, I think you can guarantee that because If you can't guarantee that your products are kosher, what are you doing? Giving a hechsher. Yeah, part of giving a hechsher is that you're saying that everything in this place is kosher. In the bag is kosher. It happens to be that company put in a lot of money. The reason I'm not mentioning it is because the company after that, they put in a lot of money to reconfigure the lines to make sure it wouldn't happen again. So, it was Yiddish. It was a Goyish company, but the Yiddish Geschäft paid for the redesign of the company to make sure it shouldn't happen.
Okay, my sheet is, I just want to call it simple, my sheet is that if something doesn't have a hechsher on it, no matter if you know it's good or not, I think you should keep it away because you never know when it could change. Now, not everybody agrees to my sheet, but recall the candies, we ever said in the past that the one sold in the United States is good. I know the CRC in Chicago has listed for them, and people constantly call.
So here's the story about Ricola. Ricola, the sticker on Ricola is worthless. As a matter of fact, it might actually be worse because if there's any beetle involved before, there's no issue. If you're making a special run for a yid, so maybe it's better to buy it without the sticker. But everything that's coming out of the plant that's shipped to the United States is actually kosher. The reason the CRC in Chicago said that there are only they said there are two things that you shouldn't use. Well, first of all, stop. There is one type that has a liquid center. That has a liquid, I think it's called dual acting, I don't know what it's called. That is absolutely, you should not use that behechlet for any purpose whatsoever. That's absolutely, it has glycerin in it, and you certainly cannot use that product. But the regular hard candies, which are made in different lines, the only shaila was that there are two flavors. There's a berry flavor and a cherry flavor that when the CRC was there, they couldn't follow it up and make sure that it has a hechsher. The person that I spoke with says that he knows that it's acceptable. So if a person doesn't want to use the cherry or the berry flavor, the other ones, the lemon, the mint, the tea verbena, the lemon mint, these things are certainly kosher without any problem and can be used. And it's not that it's okay. There are people that are on top of it that are oimid mitzad klal yisrael to keep an eye on the products in addition or except for the fact that the other person has stickers on it.
When it comes to vitamins, cough medicines, over-the-counter drugs, remedies, antihistamines, Motrin, Tylenol, a lot of these things used to or still do have alphas in them. I know it wasn't told me many times, but if somebody has the thing, he's not allowed to take cough medicine is safe unless it has action.
Okay.
There's no headache, even if somebody's sick, whatever, you should take chicken soup, instead of the bottle at the time.
Rav Belsky was absolutely right, that if something has treif in it, you shouldn't take it. The question is if it has treif in it at the present day, today in 2019. There is, first of all, it's very easy to check. Everything that's being sold, whether it's over the counter, whether it's a brand name or generic, has a lot code on it, and I have not seen one that doesn't have a customer service number. And if you call the customer service number and you ask them if it's a vegan product, if they tell you that it is, certainly there are many reasons in halacha why you can be samech on that. Befrat, that bisman hazeh, you have a kol parish on kosher glycerin. And third of all, because together with some other people, we've been tracking glycerin shipments within the United States for the pharmaceutical department, no, not for nutraceuticals, not for stuff like these make-believe homeopathic, but for pharmaceutical use. And we have not seen that there should be any shipments, as opposed to, let's say, in Canada, and when they had the whole problem with the Tylenol from J&J, from Johnson & Johnson a couple of years ago, because they would bring it in, they had a fire in their American plant, and they would bring in products from Canada. And then, again, you keep it. Now, I got to tell you that I have no idea what they do in other places. In MPGS, we have a two Frum pharmacists, and before they bring in anything, whether it's with a name brand or whether it's a generic, they call the company to make sure that the glycerin, if there's glycerin in it, the glycerin is from a vegetable source. Every person has the right to do that. Every person should call the companies, and if the company tells you it's vegan, you have a right to believe them, and then you know that you can use the product.
That's concerning cough medicine, over-the-counter drugs.
Yes.
And histamine and more.
Yes, all these
What
things.
about vitamins?
Vitamins is a whole different deal. I'll tell you why. Before we opened up the pharmacy, we had a meeting with Rabbi Feinstein and with other Pesachim to decide for a mahalach of how to start, what we should have on the shelves. And all the Pesachim b'pe'achad said that a medication itself on pills is no concern whatsoever, to the point where I wanted to not put on. There are certain types of things that have lactose. Pills you have to be very concerned about, have lactose in them. They did not even want to hear about lactose as being a problem for a medicine. And before you think that it's not a problem, I asked the pharmacist to take 10 random medicines, not over the counter, not Drim, and this, 10 medicines. He was shocked. I think 5 or 6 of the 10 had lactose in the pill formulation. Lactose is milchik. Lactose can come from, if it's made in Europe, it can come from non-kosher cheese. But every person we spoke to said that you're swallowing it, it's not ishleik derech achila, there's no problem at all. So when we said, okay, how about vitamins and nutraceuticals, that even Rav David, who was more makel than other person we spoke to, said, vitamins, what is it? It's like a candy. It's not, it's nothing. It's not, no, it's, even l'chumra, when you say that it has a din of a food, but it has to be something that's a davar botik of nusa. If you're taking something to take it, and it's a shayla of Shabbos, you can take it on Shabbos night, you can say, okay, it's a food. But to take a vitamin on Shabbos as a refuah, if it has treif, not on Shabbos, if it has treif, it's a very difficult thing to say.
Every year we go over this list of Pashas, just what I looked at here, it's repeated many times that wine needs a very, very small hechsher. I hear it from all over. Can we have a list of the better ones? I know the best, remember I said the Badatze de Feliz is very good, Zegbach is very good, Wattenberg from France is good, and I know I spoke to Zegbach myself a few times and he told me that there's a Rav Katz in France, which is also, Shvoget Wattenberg is very good, and Chaim Hayavachshal is good. He said he passed back, but he's not alive.
He's not alive anymore. I don't know who took over his stuff.
What else is good?
I'll just give you an example of the problems that he doesn't, and you don't even realize it. Recently, the Bedatz was taking over a winery in Eretz Yisrael, taking over the Hashgacha. And they walked in, and they saw that there were a number of Falashins working there. Now, the Falashins, some of them are echt frum, many of the Falashins are not, and even some of those that say they're frum or say they're dati, they came over, and the Bedatz asked them, very nice, but who was on the Geras? They came from Ethiopia. They were, I don't want to say the word because in America it's a very derogatory term, but they were Schwarze. They say they were Yidden, and the Rabbanut, because of political pressure, because the Freie Chazafreset Zionim came along and said, well, you can discriminate. They discriminated against the whole life. Now they're here in Israel. They came to Israel. You can discriminate against them. So the Rabbanut said, yeah, okay, right, fine, okay, fine. And they passed them off. And there's a very, very, very big problem. So there are Erliche Fruma Falashins that went through a full Geirus, and they're sitting now in the Eilam Atayr, and they're from like Erlich. They came in, and the Bedatz asked, Weiss that how do I know you're a Yid? They said, you're discriminating against blacks. They made a whole big deal. So right away, the Chiloni press came running in, that the Turkaita, they're trying to discriminate against this, And between the whole tumult, they said there are 3 other Ashkachas there. They said, by the way, how did you check it? They said, never thought about it. Never occurred to them that the people making their wine are not Yidden. And even if they themselves are Dati, if they were born from a mother that was not Megayis, don't forget, because now we're dealing already with second generation Falashins. If the mother came here and the Rabban pat her in the head and said, Shefi, you're okay, and then the son became Frum, he's not a Yid. And the Bedatz haben Gor gekrogen klep about this, but they wouldn't back down. They gave away the Hashgacha. And the other 3 agencies are still there. So in Eretz Yisrael, it's very, very difficult. I was at a winery together with an American Rav Machsher who gives a hashgacha there. In Eretz Yisrael, aside from all the other problems that we always talk about when it comes to wine, In America, there are problems with many, I'll keep going, many wines are made in non-kosher wineries. There's a halacha that's called metaher yenoi shel akum b'yad akum. The halacha is, this isn't a chumrah, this isn't a fantasy land. The halacha is, when you have metaher yenoi shel akum b'yad akum, tuchsumus are not enough. You need a wall 10 tefachim. That's the law. You need to gather 10 tefachim. A mashgiach friend of mine told me that what they do is they stretch out, like when you go past a construction site, they have this orange piece of plastic that they stretch out with the holes in it. They stretch that out. It's such a joke. He said that when the guy has to go from one side to bring something, he doesn't even bother going around. He just pushes it down and steps right over it. It's not clear that it has the din of the halacha of a gather yud tefachim. So those are problems you have here. In Eretz Yisrael, you have other kinds of problems. The problem is that the vintners spend a lot of time grafting, because if you want the vine to grow better and to give out stronger fruit, you have to graft it. You have to markiv it. The problem is that when you markiv a vine, that part of the vine now gets a din of arla, and you have to wait 3 years for arla, 1 year for netter avai. The B'datz has a very sophisticated computer system where when they're in a vineyard, they number each of the vines, and they keep track, what they can harvest. And when they have a harvest for a wine that has the B'datz, they will only take certain things. So when people say, I know that they also work in the same place over there as the B'datz, so it must be okay. No, it's not necessarily okay. They have a problem. In Eretz Yisrael, by the way, it's interessant Zach, there's a halacha l'mesh mesinai that in Chutz La'aretz, Safek Arla is mutter, is l'chula. In Eretz Yisrael, Safek Arla is a deraisa. That means if you have an honest to goodness reason to believe there's a Safek Arla in this vineyard, and what comes from that vineyard is a shayla of a Safek deraisa. So the sveikas there are very strong. I went with this Rav Machshir to see what he's doing, and look, he says they're locked up. They have a mashgiach that lives near there. He comes, okay, fine. I was walking out, and there is a tasting room. This is very fine, very hush of a wine. And there was a tasting room. And the owner of this vineyard, his father, is a very nice guy, fry as an egg. He went through the war, he has no kashrus, he came, he fought in the wars, he fought in 4 wars and 5 wars, and he said he fought in 6, I don't know how many wars he fought for Eretz Yisrael, a bracha of Zayn Kapela. But he's a fry yid. And what does he do to keep himself busy? He works in the wine room, the comes of tasting. He's the one that pours the wine to make sure that every person that comes to drink from the tasting room is drinking from Samyen. So I said to the Rav Machshir, I said, how you talking? He says, listen, we're not responsible for that. I said, look in there. There are 2 families of Flatbush Yidden that are looking out at you. They see you, you're the Rav Machshir, everybody knows who you are, and you're standing here, and they're sitting there and drinking. I said, you don't think that they're drinking because you're standing here? So it's a very difficult, a person who's not geribin in the administrative aspects of what's involved in the hechsher doesn't understand that it's not just the shayla. I spoke to another American Rav Machshir. He gives over there. I said, do you have a mashgiach? He says, well, we work together. I said, so, the other hechsher there is like, it's not something that people rely on. He says, yeah, but I told them, in case they ever have any shaylas, they should call me, and I'll pass them, and then they'll feel zechayim like that. So it's very difficult to imagine that they're going to bother to call the American Rav Machshir and the guy there is standing there and telling him it's fine, let's go ahead. So you have to know, the list that you gave is very comprehensive.
Is there any more?
The list that you gave is very comprehensive.
Caramel is supposed to be good even though it says condiment, which is not.
Well, the Carmel for a while some of them has the Rabbi Reuben, has the B'das Mahadran. And the ones that have B'das Mahadran are fine.
The ones that come from America don't have B'das Mahadran. I think it's all the same, no?
I hesitate, unless you know absolutely surely so, because the chug is not a strong hechsher at all.
Anything. Yeah. What's the roof? Schnapps, liquor, I always say over Shem He says to show inside, Kalalis, Tinka, no patch.
Well, actually, she's inside the Klai Soul should stop drinking so much. Actually, I know that there was I don't know if you can call it a simcha. There was a celebration. Good Baruch Hashem, a person had a baby. Kodesh Baruch Hu sushi and Matzah. The bill for the schnapps was $11,200 for a kiddush. I don't care if the guy gives stock a Ibram cup. A person who spends $11,200 on schnapps for a kiddush, it's not a simple thing. If this is what Klal Yisrael has come to, they need more than just a hechsher. There are certain very simple schnapses are not a problem. Very simple bourbon, although you have to make sure it's not aged. Now, they saw that Scotch they can sell for $100 a bottle because it's aged in wine barrels, so they say a kapar de geld. So bourbons now have also shaloik minigailim. They've started aging it. But if you buy a cheap bourbon, Stam bourbon does not have Waterford, these type of things that have Stam bourbon is not going to be a problem. Scotches, unless you know for sure, they have American scotches that are not blended. The stuff coming from Scotland, it's not a shaila of kosher or not kosher, because there's a whole shtickle Torah that they go through whether the halacha is that stam yenim is batel chad b'sheish. It's not shaykh come out in the Welt to have percentages of that, but there is no question. The only person that would paskin that it's bottle is a person who doesn't understand. If you go to a feinschmecker maven, he can not only give him a scotch that was aged in bourbon barrels, he will in wine barrels. He'll not only tell you what kind of wine, he'll tell you what brand of that kind of wine. That's what a starke Eindruck the wine makes in the scotch. It's very difficult to imagine that such a thing can be bottled. So, scotches are very often blended, and they have other things. There are some scotches that are single barrel, single malt. Okay, fine. That would be mutter. If it has wine barrels, it's very difficult to understand why people would say that it's mutter. Vodka from Europe, you have to be chayshish that it has milk in it, milk alcohol. That's very common. A friend of mine, a Rav from France, told me. He called me. He says, "I heard that in America people drink Grey Goose." I said, "I've seen it." He says, "Everybody in France knows that it's made with not kosher product. They have, and they do. There is a line within the same distillery that uses grape products in the same thing. It's just, so it's bottled, but it's very difficult to imagine why Yidden would endanger themselves by drinking this kind of stuff. You don't drink. You're not a goy. You drink to make l'chaim. So you drink a little bit. You buy them all. You buy one with a hechsher. It's very difficult to understand.
Yeah, lately there were alerts about beer also that they have different flavors and milk and in the United States beer.
The only ones that's going to happen are the craft beers, and a person cannot use craft beers. Every craft brewery that I visited has non-kosher product there. That's just the way it works. Ze berimmen sich on the fact that they use all these modern Sachen. I was in a brewery, in one of these microbreweries. The guy had just finished making, for one of his clients, he made a special brew before Thanksgiving. It had turkey fat in it. Because Ney Mishpachah make a special beer with turkey fat, and he made in the same kalim that other people come and say, "Oh, it's just beer. Beer is you don't need a hechsher." It's these little breweries, these microbreweries are absolutely cannot use them without a hechsher. And even if someone went there and he made something there once, you never know what they've done since then. They all use milk powder for the sugar fermentation. It's very, very. There are beers with hechsherim. Sam Adams has a hechsher. Coors has a hechsher. There are beers with hechsherim. It's very difficult to. Yeah, those are perfectly fine. There are two of the flavors that Smirnoff makes that are milchik. One is called root beer float. The other is called cappuccino. Other than that, they're all perfectly fine.
There's a tumult lately that Coca-Cola that comes from other places in the world, not from the United States or Israel, is a problem.
It's simply not true. I have to go to old Russia. Those people who have a hechsherim on the bottle say that you can use anything unless it has our hechsher. Because if not, Coca-Cola is going to say, what do I need you for if people are buying the other stuff? So they discourage buying other stuff. I spoke to a mishkiach in Mexico that is intimately familiar. That was one of the big things. Of course, they brought it in before Purim. They had the little bottles everybody wanted to put in the Shlach Manas. So certain people in certain agency were telling everybody you can't use it. It's absolutely not true. It's kosher, and that's not. Now, it happens to be, I wouldn't say the same thing about Pepsi, because Pepsi makes products locally. Coca-Cola is made in 4 steps. They have an essence, a flavor, a concentrate, and a bottling. And by the time it gets to the bottling, there's nothing trace you can put into it, because any of the problematic or challenges are done before, and those are always done in-house. There are 2 places in the world where they make them, and everything else is made after the bottlings. After that can be a shalik kidney on Pesach. I wouldn't use it on Pesach without. Coca-Cola anywhere in the world is using a concentrate, which the flavor and the essence and the concentrate are made under hashgacha. There is no place that they make it that is not under hashgacha. Yeah.
And which sodas are good in the United States?
In the United States, Pepsi, Coke, Schweppes, ginger ale, Sprite are, you can, wherever you are, you can use it without a problem.
I don't want people to make a mistake. When you say Coke, you mean the Coke?
Coca-Cola, just the Coke itself, not the Coke, not cherry, not the other things. It means the original Coca-Cola.
And then people under the assumption that flavored salsa doesn't need a hechsher.
There's no reason not for that. The most famous, the most popular flavored salsa that has a K here is something called Apollo. What's it called? That thing with the bubbles. On Novi has this. There's a bubble that has just a K. It's a bottle with Rashidin flavors, just has a K, and now it has a triangle K. The mashgiach, I can tell you, has not been there for years. They have it not for Pesach, not for the year. You can't use it absolutely. No. And that seltzer that they sell in all the Yiddish geschäften, and I have no idea why. It has flavors in it. Because they say it's made in a place that the other hashgachas, you have no idea what they're using in it, and they have no idea, nor any interest in what they're using in it. Absolutely not. Yeah, it's much easier. It's much easier.
I heard that some sharing don't check the carbon dioxide used for the Pesach salsa. Is it true, or?
I don't know. I could tell you that at MPGS we made for many years. We made our own seltzer, and we didn't go anywhere. The guy had to produce the letters and the stuff. I can't imagine a number of the place where we made it. A number of the Heimish also made there. I can't speak for other places, but I can assure you that it's part of what people look at when they look at the OU wood.
Vitamin drinks, energizer drinks, Red Bull doesn't even have a hechsher, and so many people drink it.
Yeah, there's an agency which recently put Red Bull on their recommended list, which is a horrible chil Hashem. The KF is a horrible, terrible hashgacha. Nothing should be used with anything with a KF on it, and they are the ones that have been the Federation. It's a you cannot. They were not in the. I could tell you. I mean, I generally don't speak. They had the hechsher on there for 5 years and had never been in the plant. And there are plants in multiple places in the world. And I was mevar this, and I called them up and I said that if you don't start sending mashgichim, I'm going to be mefarsim to the whole world, which I'm doing right now, by the way. What a miserable hashgacha they are. And they haven't been there for years. They had a short period when they tried to get better, but something happened last week. They have no person who is the hechsher of the Dvar Hashem has any business using anything with KF on it. Yes, they do have all these candies. And if the other hechsherim, like the Star K, that go with them, it's because they're in the same bed. Rav Belsky Zichron Levracha once told me, he says, everybody knows, the Gemara says that he was a Talmud Vosik who had 150, kuf nun taimim, why a sheretz should be tahar. Rav Belsky once told me, he said, the Tam was der Talmud hat es mit Tar gewesen, is nicht, weil sich also beliebt mit der Sheretz, na hat es schon angeriert. So, once they're working together, so suddenly they have reasons to say, yeah, their work is also okay, and it doesn't reflect well on the Starke either.
Let's go to some quick Pesach questions. Plates, bowls, cups, plastic?
No problem. Plastic, no problem whatsoever. Wax paper, plasticware, hot cups, none of them are a problem. Paper also, there's a certain person here, when we were all young, we learned Goyish in yeshiva. And in yeshiva, in Goyish, they taught you that if you ever want to test for starch, if you take iodine and you put it on a paper, on something with starch, it'll be blue. If it turns blue, that's starch. So he remembered this, and he went to a paper plate and he puts iodine on it and he said, oh, there's starch, everything's treif. What it really means is that the cellulose fiber that you make paper from naturally has wood starch in it. That's what was turning blue. But there is no reason whatsoever to be concerned with the paper towels, the paper napkins, the paper plates. They überhaupt, if they do use starches in some of the processes, and those starches are turned to acids as they bond with the paper, and they're certainly not a shayla of blias. And the worst you're going to have is the kidneys before Pesach, which was nishtana into an acid. It's very difficult to assume that should be a problem.
Baking pans, cupcake cups, aluminum paper, corrugated.
Okay, the baking cups, corrugated, by the way, is something that I asked there are a number of hechsherim that make Kosher For Passover cakes. And we know that the Kosher For Passover, the potato starch cakes, you can't, if you try cutting them, they turn to sawdust. So they sell you the cake in the bekela. They take a corrugated bekela and they bake it in that, and they give you the whole thing. So when you pull off the bekela, it falls to pieces, but it's your problem, not theirs. So I asked them, I said, do you know how you make corrugated, a number of hechsherim. I said, do you know how you make corrugated bekela? I said, no. I said, well, what you do is you take paper, baking paper, which we'll talk about in a moment, and you roll it under segregated rollers, and they roll a line of glue across the paper, and then you take another paper and you roll it up into the corrugation, you put it on, that's how you glue, then you put another paper on top. So you're dealing here with something that's held together with glue. Do you know if the glue is maybe from cornstarch, or wheat starch, or is it chametz? They had no idea. So Lemaisa, it's not a problem. But there is what to be concerned about in buying in anything you can buy from outside your house that uses glues or things like that. It happens to be that the bigger problem at the end, there's nothing. The industry does not use anything that's a problem. What you really want to be concerned about in this is that the baking paper itself has to be made non-absorbent, in order that when they put the batter in, every batter has water or some liquid. It'll get sucked into the paper, and it's going to destroy it's just not going to bake right. So the paper that they make has to be waterproof, and the way that's done is that when it's manufactured, they have chemicals that they put in, and if you do not know that they're kosher, it's very possible that these fatty acids and these oils that they use are coming from tallow. In Europe, it's common to be coming from tallow, and I could tell you that there's certain hechsherim that they use it. They never checked into it. They said, big deal, it'll be bottled anyways. There are certain Heimish companies that put it out there that had no hechsher until I told them that we're going to stop taking it MPGS. We're not going to carry it without a hechsher. They got a letter from somebody. But it's very kedai to make sure that I would rather use 10 times out of 10 Reynolds baking cups with an OU than some of these other ones with the Yiddish ISIS, because at least the guys in the OU I know looked into it's called an alkyl dimer, a ketone alkyl dimer. That's the chemical that they use. The other people had no idea what he's even talking about. But yes, they do need a hechsher. Baking paper, that means parchment paper, baking cups, these bekelach all need a good hechsher.
The regular aluminum 9x13 still need a hechsher?
They do not need a hechsher mitzad the manufacturing or mitzad the stamping oil. These things, when they stamp them, they take a sheet and they stamp it into the form. So when you stamp it into the form, it tends to get stuck from the heat, from the friction. So they have to spray a mold release on it, and that mold release is always going to be mineral oil, and there's no reason to be concerned about it. If a person wants to wash it off with soap and water, tov of bracha. And concerning the toiveling, that's you talk to whoever is your Rav Machsher.
I just want to know consider. I know that a lot of supermarkets have mikvahs there. Some of them don't have a hechsher at all, and some of them claim they do have a hechsher. One of them, Baruch, I called it Rav Machsher. They told me he made for them many years ago, but he has no.
That happens. That's always the case. That's always the case that I've seen. That even if they, as a matter of fact, I was working with a bakery and they were buying stuff from a Yiddish place, and they're going to take care of the tefillah. They have their own mikveh. I said, really? I said, who's the Rav Machsher? She's like, so I mean Rav Machsher. I said, you have a mikveh. It's not chopped liver. You need Rav Machsher. Oh, well, they gave me the name of this person, and I called him, the Rav, and he said, yeah, he made it like 8 years ago. I said, they're still using your name. He said, yeah. I said, when was the last time you checked it? It's interesting. I was just on my way out there to check it for the first time in 8 years. And he called me later, and he said, I want you to know, Avada was kosher, but I'm so glad because we were mashaper. It said, even though it was good, now it's even better. Tfilas kalim, and something that needs tfilas kalim is shayla v'derais. According to the Rosh, if you cook food in something that needs tfilas kalim that wasn't kasher, there's an issur on the food. So there you go.
Plastic baggies, sandwich bags, throwaway aprons. Is there any issue with powder and starches?
They don't have none of. If it has powder on it, there's a problem.
You can see the powder.
You see the powder though. And the gloves that have powder say powdered. They're powder free because people that have allergies stay away from them. So they do declare on them if they're powder free or not.
And balloons that people put into their mouth and blow it up.
It's hard to use a balloon. They have powders in them.
New pots, do they have any hechsher of
For a while there was a shmooze like this, but I've never been able to verify it. I've never heard authoritatively someone that I know knows what he's talking about said, I saw this, or I know this.
I think there's a steel pot. It's not stainless steel, but the ones that use like a wok. Could be those dish with oils.
Cast iron. Cast iron needs libun chomer before you can use it. If you buy a cast iron pan or pot, you have to make libun chomer before you can use it because the way that they manufacture it, they smear it with oil, and then they heat it. So it means it's makabel blias, dry al yedei eish. It needs libun chomer. It's very difficult to imagine why not.
Dish soap powders for cleaning the
No,
dishes.
nifsal me'achilas kelv doesn't require anything, even for Pesach.
Okay. Lipstick, I got to send the list.
Yeah.
The Square Bezman has a list of Caroline, and Abby
Yes.
just came out with a whole new line, which is supposed to be better than its old one.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Pesach list should be very, even maybe whole year.
There certainly are cosmetics that have some chametz in them. So people, there are poskim who hold that different from mabakach. What's the difference? It's nifsal mechilas kelev, and it's not this. Okay, if a person is zeichet to have an erliche children, an erliche wife, they're not going to be masking to put something on their mouth that's not kosher. Mir Teshem by all of us. So you look for things that have a hechsher. That doesn't mean that it's not kosher. I spoke to from the Gedalia Poskim today, even about carmine, which is not kosher. It says that it's lava daite. It's not a psikration. It's a hagarim. There are 1,000 different reasons why it's mutter. But
Chapstick for a whole year.
plain chapstick without any flavors is perfectly fine. And I never bothered going through the flavors because if someone needs a flavor instead of plain chapsticks, they can waste somebody else's time. If you have chapped lips, use chapsticks. If you want a candy, you get a candy.
Vaseline's not a problem, right?
Vaseline's not a problem. Vaseline's a brand name. Petroleum jelly is not a problem.
This I want to be very similar if I'm right. Lotions, a lot of people spray lotions on their chapped hands, especially when we're washing a lot of dishes. And then they touch food. You don't realize that it is a layer of
It is. You taste it on the food. You taste it on the food. You taste it on the food. And I can tell you that Rav Belskis, I know this for a fact, personally, would use, for the shower, for bath soap, he would use rokeach, kosher soap. Because the Be'er Halacha about, the Gemara says that Sicha Kishsiya, so the Be'er Halacha doesn't say it's us, the Be'er Halacha says that it's Kedai to be Machmer, and I can tell you that Rav Belskis certainly in his own life, not what he passed me, I know that he did this, and there's enough stuff that's kosher. The lotions, if you're going to put it on, at least you should make sure you wipe it off very well.
Yeah, that's why I was worried.
Yeah.
You forget about the sushi, which you don't pass them.
Yeah. You have to make sure to get rid of it. Yes.
Is there any reason to rinse eggs before using them for Pesach?
Before you cook with them.
Yeah.
Not before you use them. If all you can do is break them, take them out, then there's certainly no problem. But to cook them in a pot, The alcohol wash that they use is not a natural alcohol, even if it's a fermentation alcohol. It's something that the teva of it, it's not absorbed. And the teva, the reason they use alcohol is because it dissipates, and there's nothing. There's nothing left there.
Nuts, raw, shelled for Pesach.
The only ones that are concerned are, even though it says that almonds are pasteurized, almonds are not pasteurized using a pasteurizer. They use the same word, but what it is it's a room that they pump up with steam to heat it up to kill the bacteria. The only nuts that there's a problem with is walnuts. You have to make sure that the walnuts do not have any preservatives, because the preservative poison that they spray on it is dissolved in corn oil, usually, when they spray it on. But if you have either walnuts in the shell, or if you have shelled walnuts that you know do not have anything on them, it's not a problem.
And for all year, roasted and dry roasted, is a national hechsher enough for
Yes.
I'd like to go into it again, because a lot of times the ones that come from national hechsher come from big companies that give fresh stuff as opposed to the ones that they hechsher.
There's a lot of these type of things. Almost exclusively, the problems that we find with infestation are on the Heimish brands, because they've been sitting in someone's basement for I don't know how long. And that's the problem. The Matzah is, if something sits around in a warm, damp place, it will get infested. That's just the Matzah, period.
And the chocolate covered nuts, those glazes that are on it.
You're talking about confectioner's glaze?
Yeah.
Well, Rabbi Moshe writes 3 reasons why it's mutal l'chila, and not a single person that I spoke to that says that you cannot use it had any understanding of what the Matzah was. It's very difficult to argue with Rabbi Moshe if you don't know what the Matzah is. So, as far as I know, the only person in the arena is Rabbi Moshe's tshuva.
You know, there's a big problem going on that a lot of stores have a share from people who don't understand English, and they probably don't know what ingredients mean, and they don't visit them too often. Like, of course, very often, ice cream stores, health food stores, pizza shops, they blend fresh strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, goji berries. These are mostly.
Yes, they are.
And I call up somebody's on there, I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's a problem. And I think your question is the answer. If somebody has no understanding what he's doing, why is he in kashrus? I once told somebody, he asked me if you can use a certain hechsher. I told him, I said, let me ask you a question. If you had a problem with your car, would you bring him your car to put in new brakes? He says, no. I said, why not? He says, he doesn't know it. I said, well, okay, that's your answer. If he doesn't know, he doesn't know it. That's just a long story. It's no different.
There's a matcha he uses in a lot of stores, our park, Winery, Mall, and he's doing for a time. I've very made in Ukraine. He had a Mashiach going once in two months. So his Ashgacha, one of the stores in our park, just a few days ago, somebody called me up that the good came out and he asked him to turn on the fire. So he was dispelled that the good asked him. I said, I'm telling you that the action is worthless. Because if the good can ask you to turn on the fire, what happens if we didn't see you outside?
That's very common. It's very common with Heimish places that they almost exclusively Heimish hechsherim say, listen, die bist Heimish in Gemein, ja? Sollst nur so lange git kusche essen war für jüdische Kinder, ja? And that's the end of the hechshkach, and don't forget to send them a check. But they leave it there. They say, what do you mean? The owner is the owner is busy. He's busy making sales. He's busy fighting with God. Yeah, but even if he's there, he's busy fighting collecting his bills. He's busy fighting paying his bills. He's busy fighting making sales. He has no time to know what's going on. It's a joke. If there's no mashgiach, there's no hashgacha.
Is there any way to eat corn on the cob? Because
yeah, by taking it off the cob. Well, the only one thing I can tell you, the frozen ones we found. That I have to tell you, I don't know why, but the one we sell frozen Cobs in MPGS, and we have them regularly checked. And for some reason, maybe it's because they've come from early in the season, maybe because they take off the green and they spray it with high power. I don't know, but they've been clean every time we've checked them. It happens to be Green Giant. I think what so.
Coffee, teas, hotels, airports, coffee shops, airplanes.
But first of all, it's the idea b'alma that Yidden should know that when you get coffee on an airplane, it's coming out of a reservoir that hasn't been cleaned in many there's bacteria. Forget about the kashrus. It's not, if you can at all avoid it, it's not a gesunte Sach to eat, to drink something. Even if you bring your own instant coffee and tell them to put the hot water into it, the hot water is coming out of a reservoir that they do not clean. They just keep adding more and more water to it. There are tzadim lahakel. Let's work it backwards. I start talking about airplanes. The airplanes, the pots that they make it in, they send it off the plane when they land, and they take it into a commercial kitchen, and they wash it together with the stuff. Does that make it usher? No, because you can be saimach that the water is pogum. They put in soap. There are a million that you can tap dance around that. You can't say that it's usher. Is it lechatchila? It's not lechatchila. So that's the best you can say about the stuff on the airplanes. If you're talking about Starbucks, and again, I'm only going to talk about Starbucks, not about other places. I don't know about other places. The black coffee in Starbucks is made in special use kalim that are not used for anything else, and they're not washed with other things either.
This is updated information because I know the Starcade.
No, the Starcade was wrong. The Starcade was wrong. They made a mistake. And they told them the reason the Starcade made a mistake is because a couple of years ago they wanted to show how smart they are, and they made a zusammenschaft, and they with Starbucks of what's recommended. I told them then, I said, this is a big mistake because sooner or later they're going to get sick and tired of all your questions, and they're going to say, Shine, do whatever you want. And then you're going to say, we can't vouch for it anymore because we don't have information. And then everybody's going to say, oh, till now you did that, till now it was good. So really they didn't know what was going on before, they don't know what's going on now, and now they put out a thing to root of the Welt. Instead, what I said all along is that you cannot use anything in Starbucks except for black coffee, period. Anything else, even if it was kosher last week, every month they send out the same products. They don't manufacture anything. Everything you see in the Starbucks is made by somebody else, except for the coffee beans. So that means that every month they go out and they give it out for bids. Sometimes the kosher place is cheaper, sometimes the not kosher place is cheaper. That's just the way it works. And then they make food also, and they wash that stuff, they all wash in the dishwasher together. So the black coffee is made in something that they don't do for anything else.
And the oil has this feeling that when the grape have 2 bottles of kosher milk, so then it's... I have Rashid that told me that they saw the
I saw it. In the place on the Palisades, when you go from the Jewish Washington Bridge to Muncie, when you pass that place, they have it. I saw the guy pouring in not kosher into the kosher bottle. It's people. I mean, how people don't think of this. Anyways.
Let's talk a little about fish. We just finished
Yeah.
Take a moment. Which brands of tuna fish are more recommended?
It's very interesting. It's a very interesting question because the truth is that none of them have their own plants and none of them have their own mashkichim. So sometimes you're going to end up with the exact same thing. A couple of seichim will get together, they'll make one big batch, and they'll put different labels on it. So therefore, it's not so much the brands, which doesn't mean anything, as the hashkachas themselves. The Velover and the Nirbater are solid, professional hashkachas that have very good quality mashkichim. They don't just go to see who can I send that's going to charge me $3 an hour and I'll be able to get away with less. They have good quality professional mashkichim, and you can assume that they're going to do the job correctly. So if you have, regardless of what the brand is, if they have a good solid hashkacha, you can rely on it.
And sardines and...
Sardines, they're ones from Morocco. I would not, the other stuff we found a lot of worms in the stomach themselves, which is a problem no matter what you do. So if you have the gutted, the ones that are skinless and boneless, where they take out the stomach, then there's not a problem. You have to have a hechsher. So even there's one that claims to have a shkoch tzmidus. I spoke to him about it. He says that every hour or two he checks the buckets to make sure that there's nothing else. That's the guy that made the tumul about the Anasakas and for the Rebbe. Yeah. The other stuff from Poland, stuff from Scotland, we found Keseda, Latvia, that they should have bugs in the Gederim. The ones from Morocco should not be a problem.
There's a lot of other canned fish, not sardines, not tuna fish, but other types of fish coming from Ukraine with
very shvach. Very shvach. People want to be ma'aided. I mean, the Rabbanim there are certainly doing gewaldig important work trying to help the Yiddishtum in the Ukraine, but it's very difficult to assume that they have the staff to do the type of complicated hashkachas that they need, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should send them parnasa from somewhere else.
Yeah, what does one need to be careful when buying fresh fish from a grocery store just saying, some people...
Well, you cannot buy any fish that doesn't have skin on it, because it's just, you have to be able to be makir the simone dogim. Once you have... Sorry? And once you have that, if you want to, you can bring along. You can tell the guy to take. They Seder are cleaning off the knife. You tell the guy before, if you're coming in, you're buying, let's say, a salmon or a carp or something like a whitefish, and you want him to cut it into steaks or to fillet it. Tell him that he should take either a steel wool, a chetchila, or certainly a rough cloth, and be meshafshef. That's the halacha. You meshafshef the knife, so there shouldn't be any shuman that's korish. That's the lashon mechaber. And you do that, then he can cut it up also. He should wash off the work surface where he's working, to wash it off, to make sure there's nothing left from the previous stuff. Other than that, it's fine. You stand there till he's done, you watch him wrap it up, and you take it home. If the lever you take, let's say you buy half a salmon, or if it's ready cut up, the halach is you have to be meshafshef the outside. You take a piece of steel wool, a plastic better, not because there's steel wool shouldn't break on the fish, and scrub the outside surface, whatever cut. That's the halacha.
Lox, salmon, and smoked fish with national share. Are they fine, or they realize sometimes that the fish is because it's this color or whatever?
The lox itself is not going to be the problem because that's salmon that they get in whole. The whitefish salad, I would be very, very careful of, because they get in fillets. I would be very, very, very careful of whitefish salad because they throw in. It's not whitefish. I don't know what it is, but it's certainly not whitefish.
We spoke last year, but since last year, a lot more came onto the surface. This summer, I spoke last year that somebody was worried from its shoulder that the seaweed that comes to the nori sheets were full of bugs, and he said that there's certain companies that were. But this summer, they wanted to give us colony camp, but I didn't want to let them until I checked it. I had some people check it for me, and we found that they were terribly infested. Not one company, but come out every hechsher, including the lover. Each one of them was infested. We didn't find one that was good. We checked many from different companies, and we ordered them. And the lover went and made good runs with very good ashkifim and Hashem since then. It was to be very good.
Yeah.
So even the Star K, we have meetings in that festivated Takana that they have to check more often or whatever. Many hechsher, I mean, the Saftas took off the hechsher from it, and a lot of hechsher decided, okay, definitely maybe calls even the Chafkei, whatever, a lot of them, they are still finding on them quite often on different companies better than it was before. I think
the good news is that it's very easy. I can't imagine a sushi shop that doesn't check the nori.
The good ones now use the velava,
Yeah, but even not the velava, the truth is that if you put it on a light, it shows up immediately. It's such a callous of using it without checking it. It takes a second. How many do you need? 20, 50? It still takes a minute. It takes 5 minutes. Put it this way: a hechsher that doesn't check the nori is a raya that it's a very, very poor hechsher. So if you have a pizza shop that makes sushi or a caterer that makes sushi and the mashgiach doesn't check each leaf of the nori, it's a raya that this is a hechsher that's very questionable.
A lot of people before Pesach, they don't know how to do the day before meal. Aside from Pesach, aside from a whole year, because it's what we had last year with Ramadan, which is some people really eat and can't even tell them no. A lot of these are kidneys.
They're all kidneys. They're all, except for stuff like Elecare, that's allergen free. So it's not. But even that, there's you have to be very, very careful. The OU, the OU has a list on their website. You can call them about which ones are kidneys, and they're very careful because they only they'll give you kidneys information and tell you clearly that it's kidneys, but there are other stuff that you take what you need and you ask the OU. If it doesn't have a hechsher, you shouldn't be using it at all. And if the hechsher doesn't know if it's kosher for Pesach or if it's kidneys, they're not doing their job. So calling the hechsher should do it.
This year we were in contact about Quinoa, that a lot of them were found to be infested. I can't say all of them, but a lot of them, in different seasons, different hechsher, infested.
Yeah, even the good ones. Even the good ones.
What's the proper way to check it?
Well, the proper way is that you do what your bubba did and don't use it. I don't know. You your bubba used quinoa. It's grass. Understand? What is it? The Rashi says that when the Rebbeinu Shalom told Adam Rishon, "Koitz v'dar gataychel," yeah, he's going to eat. So Adam started crying. Zok Rashi, he says, "V'chi ani v'sheri yoichel mi'avas echad." I'm going to eat grass. So mitzamol. So he said, "No, you're not going to have to eat grass. Mitzamol. People think that the best thing they can do is eat grass. That's what quinoa is. It's grass. It's grass seeds." Okay, it's not like that. So you have to take a sifter. It's very difficult to check. If it's infested, you can't. It's a hard thing to do. We found it in many different brands, in very strong brand names like Kirkland. Kirkland was infested, and Kirkland they're meshuga about quality control. Forget about the kashrus, but it's the quality control. And Kirkland stuff was infested. That means anything can be infested. So you have to check each batch. You have to take a sifter, and you sift it out because the black bugs that are in quinoa are very small. And so you have to take a sifter that has a fine enough mesh that it'll hold back the little quinoa balls, but when you shake it, the other stuff, it's not like rice. You can't soak it like rice and beans. The other stuff floats it up. Quinoa you can't soak; it just becomes a solid mass. You can't soak it.
Is there a reason why unwashed carrots, pasta, radishes, horseradish?
No, the only thing that's kedai to buy unwashed is baby carrots, because baby carrots are moved in a flume that has water and citric acid in it. Citric acid could be a problem, but plain stuff is not a problem.
And I just know you were in other places. You said before the Costco has many things. I know shop.
Yes.
And sometimes in the hechsher does too.
Yeah.
People just remember that. The Rabbi baking matzahs is a new kind of flour.
Einkorn. I rather happen to think einkorn, if you look at it, is probably much closer to the original wheat kernels than what we have now. And if anything, the kernels that we harvest now with the different zanim are more hybrid than einkorn. Einkorn is these ancient grains are mamish wheat. That's what wheat used to look like.
Many people try to be machmir and make their own matzahs. It's definitely beginning, but practically, is it better that they do it or?
No, unless if a person wants, like I said, a person who wants, if he'd have a filling, if have a cavity, would want to do their own filling. So such a technical person could also make their own matzahs. Making matzahs is a profession. You work in a matzah bakery for weeks and you get to realize, you see how skilled these people are. First of all, I'm not even talking about the people that have critical jobs like the fenemer or the feener to make sure it's done, but even the radler and even the guy that's vulgaring it out. These people, if you don't do it right, first of all, very practically speaking, if a matzah is not the same thickness all around, it's either going to be not done or it's going to be burnt. That's the way it works. You need people that are malumed in the business and in the skill of doing this. If you want to participate, so you pay for it. You go. You can help the guy schlep a sack of flour or something. That's also. But to stand by the table and make believe you're not a vulgar, or to not your rail, or to put it into the oven, these are skills that have to be learned over weeks of practice, not in one day. You can go to the mikveh and you can put in your shtreimel and you come and you sing Hallel and you can do whatever you want, but keep your hands to yourself.
I saw somebody made a challah here, one of the big matzah bakeries, and there was a vent right next to the shissel, and he was spraying back and forth from the old flour.
If you don't know, then you simply don't know. And the truth is that the workers in the bakery get very offended, and they say, "Du meinst das du gehst mir upton," and they do. A guy came and he asked me. He says he just wants to know. He says his job. He knows he's not a Teidlicher person. So what did he do? He was by the packing. After the club, he says, the guy I was watching, because they had stuff from before Achabur that was rejected. And then the guy told me someone wants me. So I went out and I came back and all those matzahs weren't there. He says, "What do you think happened to them?" I said, "They went into your boxes. What do you think happened to them?" He said, "What do you think they did? Why didn't the guy send you out?" And they, if you don't understand, it's not a joke. It's not something you do because you have good ritzainus. Good ritzainus are important, but it doesn't make it work.
So I think we were all the time considering about strawberries. As much as all the companies are trying to come out with strawberries, somehow they would never understand they come with good products. I'm saying I have very much people who are constantly checking. I don't know what to say. You know,
Yeah, I could tell you that for many, many, many years, Began did not come out with strawberries, and they finally did, and we checked them, and they were clean, so we started selling them, and someone said they had a problem, and we checked that particular batch, and it was some, but everything else we checked was not. So it was something with that particular batch, and everything else since then has been clean. We left it on the shelves, because I went and I had multiple checkers, checking multiple times after that. And it came out, it was that one thing. And the Nibat himself checked over 100 cases of product, and they were clean. And with good, not just, they don't send the early, real professional checkers. So I don't know what the problem was in that batch that you found. We spoke about that. We spoke about that, I know. But since then, it's been checked multiple times, and it was clean. No, it's the hechsherim that put their names on these things very often feel that it's not a problem in the first place. For instance, I'll give you a mashal, there's a certain type of keli that a certain Rav Machshir gives a hashgacha to. He says doesn't need so I called him to ask him about what they do and how they make the kinyonim, and it's there. So I said, if you hold the kind of b'shvach kli and these type of kinyanim, he says, listen, you sell chametz? Anybody that sells chametz, this is mechir is just as good as that. So what that means is that he holds mikadin is mutter. So once somebody holds mikadin is mutter, he has very little nemonis of making sure he's doing a job the way you want him to. So that's, whenever you see something on very marginal things like strawberries, you better make sure that you know that the Rav Machshir holds it's a problem and is going to get rid of it as a problem, not just say, yeah, it's good enough.
I want to thank Rabbi Yechezkel Auerbach, who's so moist and kashrus, stands up, echad hoya avlom, connected the tibur, and Baruch Hashem, a lot of things have changed since then. Ich darf ihn weiter, ich soll Menschen, ich ist ja schon Tevis, gesund, Achs, Manosse, und alles ist, wir haben die Continue, da wächst der König weiter.
Amen.
You mentioned this, yogurt, strawberries, and you put the on that?
No.
You can't?
If you had mahadrin, where shea cast is makid, is makid, but this is not makid. You have to assume it's not. It's to their standard.
Strawberries and blueberries.
It's no better than their action. Nein.
Oil, you said. Oil. The extra virgin oil. They kasher it too.
So what?
Kasher the kind for the extra virgin oil.
Yeah, but first of all, granted, it happens to be that it doesn't really require koshering because it goes right in. They take it and they put it into a tank, they pack it off right away. It doesn't age. Other oils, you had problems with kalim. But extra virgin olive oil, granted, doesn't have that problem.
Koshering is a problem.
Koshering is a problem with oils, b'chlal, yeah.
100% Twizzlers good. 100% extra virgin olive oil is good. Look at proof based off this.
With a good hechsher. Stuff that from the...
Let's say Liebes, Weissman.
I didn't mention Liebes. I said the stuff with the nirvater, mishpacha,